Again, it's a rich thing.
What is going on, guys? Welcome back. In today's video, we're going to build a graphical user interface mailing client in Python. And this is what it's going to look like in the end. We're going to have this graphical user interface where I can log into a Gmail account, for example, or as long as you provide the respective SMTP server and the server also accepts your request, you can log into any email that you want. I'm going to use neuraltesting2021@gmail.com. I'm going to enter my password here. I'm going to enter the SMTP server of Gmail, and I'm going to choose the port 587, which is specified on the Gmail page. Then I log in, and there you go. Since the data was correct, it's now enabled here, and I have prepared a temporary mail that I can send emails to. So I can just copy this email, and I can enter it here. I can enter the subject "Hello World." What is up is the mailing text. I can send this. It asks if I really want to send this. Yes, I want to. Mail sent. There you go. It received the mail. What is up? Now I can also go ahead and add some attachments. So hello world 2. What is up? I will add an attachment here. Then I can add an attachment here. I can use the code for today's video with the graphical user interface file. I can choose multiple files here. I can open them. You can see down here that now they are attached to the email. I can send them. There you go. Mail sent. And if I now open this here, you can see down here I have the attachments. I can download the Python file and the UI file. And this is what we're going to build in today's video. Alright, now for this project, we're going to use Qt5, which is a GUI development framework, so a graphical user interface development framework. We have used it on this channel already. I also have a tutorial on it for the basics, so if you don't know what Qt5 is, or Qt in general, then you can check out the video if you want to. The graphical user interface itself, we're going to design it with a Qt Designer. This is a tool that you can just download from the internet, so just type Qt Designer download and you're going to find the tool. And for the actual Python integration, we're going to use PyQt5, but we're going to talk about that when we get to the code. So let's go ahead and run the Qt Designer. And here we're going to design the graphical user interface that you just saw in the preview. We're going to take the template main window. We're going to create this. We're going to maximize this. Now let me just make my camera a little bit smaller. It's not that important. We're going to remove this menu bar here, and now we can just point and click. We can drag and drop here our graphical user interface. This is what it has to look like in the end. So what we're going to do first is we're going to get some labels. We're going to say this is a label for the email address. By the way, of course, if you want to design this yourself, you can just skip to the coding part. You don't have to watch me make this graphical user interface, but if you have never done it, maybe you want to keep watching and don't miss any important information here. So we're going to take a line edit for the actual information like email address and password and SMTP server and so on. And we're going to make this box a little bit larger. We're going to copy the label here. We're going to change this to password. We're going to copy, we're going to copy the line edit here. Now, important for the password, you want to have some obfuscation, so you don't want the password to be visible in clear text. And for this, you scroll down here and you change the echo mode to password. There you go. And that's basically it. We're going to make this smaller. So we then have the SMTP server. We're going to copy the label here. SMTP server. We're only going to need SMTP because we're not going to receive anything with that client. We're just going to send mails using that client. And then we can also choose the port number because the port number differs from server to server. And then we're going to specify this in this small line edit here. And last but not least, we want to have a push button. This push button is going to be the login. And this should look more or less like the code that I have prepared, like the GUI that I have prepared. Looks fine. Now, what we want to have is we want these fields down below to be inactive and disabled unless we logged in successfully. By the way, what I didn't show you in the preview is that if you enter some nonsense here, and try to log in, it says login failed. So it doesn't work and it doesn't unlock these boxes down below, even if you enter a valid format. So even if you enter @ and dot, and even if you pass a valid SMTP server, if the login fails, you're not going to be able to access these fields. So what we want to have is we want to have, what's the first one? We want to have to and subject. So who are we sending this mail to? And what is the subject of the email? So to, and another line edit. There you go. We can have multiple recipients. So let's just move this a little bit here. There you go. You can also use, by the way, layouts if you want to have a more rigid structure instead of placing everything manually. So to, then copy that, or actually let's copy both of those and change this here to subject. Maybe move this a little bit to the right. There you go. And let's resize this a little bit so that it fits the layout. And then what we have is we have the add attachment button. So we scale this down a little bit. We resize this a little bit to make space for the attach button. Add attachment. There you go. And then we're going to have the mail text. Mail text, like that we want to send to the recipient or the recipients. And for this, we're going to use a, where is it? Text edit. So we're not going to use a line edit. We're going to use a text edit because we want to have this big field here. And yeah, and down below, we're going to add a label, which we're going to call attachments. So in the beginning, it's going to be empty attachments. And later on, we're going to add text to it when we add attachments. And then we also need a send button, obviously. Now let's resize this a little bit so we have more space for attachment text. And also resize this so we have more space. And down here, we're going to add a button, which is going to be called send. Send mail. So maybe move this up a little bit. There you go. And we also want to enable for this label the word rep so that if we have a lot of attachments, we can see all of them, or most of them at least. And what we now want to do as well is we want to set all this to enabled false. So this is not enabled. This is not enabled. This is not enabled. This is also not enabled. And this is also not enabled. And now, of course, you can also play around with the structure a little bit so that it just looks better. If you are a UI person and you want perfection, everything should be aligned and all that. But we're going to focus on the functionality. So this is a basic graphical user interface. Doesn't look 100% like this one, but pretty much. And we're going to now save this. So we're going to save this on the desktop for now. And we're going to call this mail GUI.ui. Doesn't matter what name you choose, just make sure it ends with .ui. And then we have this file and we can drag it into PyCharm. So into the directory that we're working in. In this case, it's going to be this main directory here, and we're going to drag it into here. And now we can start with the coding. So this is basically the XML UI file. This is everything that we just created in the Qt Designer. And now we're going to load this file into Python and work with it from there. All right, so let's get into the programming part. We're going to start by opening up the command line and by installing PyQt5 by saying pip install PyQt5 like that. In my case, it's already installed, so it's not going to install anything. I recommend you install Qt5 itself and also PyQt5 because I'm not sure if PyQt5 installs Qt5. So you want to have the basic framework as well. And then we can just go ahead and say import, or actually from PyQt5.qt widgets, import everything, and then from PyQt5 import UIC. By the way, I'm going to look at my second monitor a couple of times because I have prepared the code and I want to make sure that I don't make any mistakes, so don't be confused by that. So we're going to start with the GUI first. Most of the code will be related to the email, to the emailing, but we're going to start with the graphical user interface, so we're not going to import the modules for the emailing yet. And we're going to start by saying class my GUI, call this whatever you want. It's going to inherit from Q main window, and the constructor is going to call the super constructor, so super my GUI self init. And then we're going to load the graphical user interface. So we're going to say UIC load UI, and we're going to pass here the mail GUI.ui and self as a parameter as well. Then we can say self show to see the graphical user interface, and that should actually be it. That is the basic graphical user interface setup, because the actual GUI is designed in the UI file already. So in order to see this, all we need to do is we need to say app equals Q application with an empty parameter list, and then window equals my GUI, and then app.exec underscore. So that should be enough to see the graphical user interface. And there you go. You can see this works. And of course, the buttons don't do anything yet. They're just there, but you can see they're disabled down here, and we need to log in up here in order to make everything work. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to assign the buttons to individual functions. So we're going to say self dot, and in order to see which button you want to access, you can go to the Qt designer and click on the button. So for example, here login has the name push button, and this button here is push button underscore 2. This button here is push button underscore 3. And of course you can rename this. It's the professional way to actually rename this. So if you want to actually build a serious project, you would rename this to login button, to attach button, to send button, and so on. We're just going to use the default names because we're not building an actual project here that is important. At least I'm not. I'm just showing a tutorial. And also, if you want to access anything from these boxes here, you need to know line edit 2, line edit 3, line edit 4, and so on. And here, of course, this label is label underscore 8, which is important because we're going to have to manipulate it. And this, of course, is text edit. So we're going to just say self dot push button, which is the first button, the login button, dot clicked dot connect. We're going to connect this button to a function called self.login. We don't have that function yet, so we're going to define it here. We're going to pass for now. Then we're going to say push button underscore 2 is going to be assigned to send mail, or actually no, this was attach, right? Attach something. This is going to be another function, def attach something. And the last button is going to be the send mail button. Send mail. There you go. So this is basically all of the UI part. We can check if this works. So I can, for example, say here print hello. And we can see that this will work. So if I run the GUI and I press login, you will see hello is printed onto the console. So this connection works. And now we need to implement the functionality. For this, we're going to start by importing a bunch of libraries. We're going to start with import smtplib, which is obviously the library for the simple mail transfer protocol. Then we're going to say from email import encoders, from email dot mime.text, we're going to import mime text. From email.mime.base, we're going to import mime base. And from email.mime.multipart, we're going to import mime multipart. And this is important for the attachments. So we do this in order to allow for attachments. And now what we're going to do is we're going to start with the first function, which is the login function. And here the goal is to log into the SMTP server to see, okay, can I log into this mailing account? And if I can do this without exceptions, without errors, then I'm logged in, then I can send emails, and then I will enable the fields down below. So here we're going to basically say try. So we're going to try something. And if it doesn't work, we're going to do something. And in the try block, what we're going to do is we're going to say self.server. So the server that we're trying to connect to is smtplib.smtp. And we're going to here pass the host, the name of the server, and the name of the SMTP server is going to be in line edit 3, which is this text box here. So we're going to say self.line edit _3.text. This is how you get the text from the line edit. And self.line edit, which one is it? 4 is going to be the port, because we also need to provide the port number here. So 4.text is going to be the port. This is going to be the basic server setup. Now, in order to get a basic response from the server, we're going to say self.server.ehlo to see if it works. Then we're going to say self.server.startTLS for the encryption, for the certificate. Self.server.ehlo again to make sure this worked. And then we can start with login. Then we can say self.server.login. And here we pass basically the email, which is lineedit.text, so the first one, and the password, which is self.lineedit2.text. And if all of this worked, we're going to proceed with a try block. If something of this part here failed, so either the SMTP connection or the login, if something failed, we're going to go to the exception and we're going to print an error message, or we're going to show an error message box later on. But for now, we're going to assume that everything worked. And if this is the case, we're going to say self dot. And what we're going to do now is we're going to disable all of these things here, and we're going to enable all of these things here. So we're going to disable line edit up until line edit 4, and we're going to disable the push button, and we're going to enable line edit 5 and 6. We're going to enable text edit. We're going to enable push button 2 and 3. All right, so we're going to say self.lineedit.set enabled false. I'm going to copy that. I'm going to add _2, _3, _4. And then we're going to also have the push button. That's basically it. And then we're going to copy, or we're not going to copy, we're going to say self.lineedit _5.set enabled equals true. We're going to copy that. We're going to do that for 6 as well. We're going to do it for the text edit. And we're going to do it for the push button 2 and for the push button 3. All right, is that everything? I think so. So we can actually see if that works, because if I now go ahead and run this and I type something in here, then nothing should happen because I have a pass statement. But if I do this properly, so if I say neural testing 2021@gmail.com with the proper password, with the proper SMTP server. By the way, if you don't know the SMTP server of your mail provider or the port, go to Google and type whatever your mailing provider is, SMTP server and port, and then you're going to find some information from them. I'm pretty sure about that. So 587 it is for Gmail, and if I now log in, this worked because those are correct informations, and then I can choose then you can see these fields are enabled and these are disabled. Now, one thing that you need to keep in mind, if you're using Gmail, you definitely want to go to the less secure apps of your Google account and you want to enable them. So just Google Gmail less secure apps allow or something like that, and then you get to this page. Then you can go to if less secure apps app access is off. You can go to turn it back on. Go through the process there, turn it on, and then only then you will be able to use this Python script, because otherwise it's going to say, okay, this is not secure. You're using some suspicious script to access your Google account, so don't do that. And if you allow for less secure apps, this is going to work. Otherwise, it's just going to crash, and you're not going to know why unless you troubleshoot for hours. So you want to make sure this works. For Gmail, at least, for some mail providers, it doesn't work at all. And for some, it works without allowing for anything. So this works up until now. The only thing that we need to do here is we need to start creating the message. So we're going to say self.message is mime multipart. This is the basic email that we're going to attach stuff to, that we're going to send later on and all that. Now let's handle the exceptions. If we get the exception called smtplib.smtp authentication error, then we're going to say message box equals qMessageBox, and the message box is going to have the set text. We're going to have the it's going to have the text invalid login info, and we're going to show this message box by executing it. If we get some other exception for some reason, maybe because we have an invalid SMTP server, we're going to copy that and we're going to just print the message login failed. All right, so this should work fine. So if I now run this and I type some nonsense in here, I should get login failed. And if I use smtp.google.com and I use 587, but I use some nonsense mail, then it should say invalid login info. Or it can crash. Depends. Now sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Let me just see again. If I enter a valid email, neural testing 2021 at gmail.com, and then some wrong password with the correct SMTP server, gmail.com 587 as a port, then it should say invalid login info. There you go. Okay, so this works. Now let's continue with the send mail function. We're going to do the attachments in the end. So we have a basic client that at least can send some text messages. And for this, what we're going to do is we're going to first ask, do you really want to send this email? Because we don't want this client to send emails just by accidentally clicking a button. So we want to have the confirmation that you really want to send this email. And for this, we're going to say again, dialog, or not again, actually, this is a little bit different. So qMessageBox, now we're going to add some buttons. So dialog dot set text first, and the text is going to be, do you want to send this mail, question mark. And then we're going to add some buttons. So dialog dot add button. It's going to be a Q push button with the yes text, and it's going to have the qMessageBox role of yes. So qMessageBox yes role. And we're going to do the same with no. Now I think there's also a dialog that does that automatically, but it doesn't allow you to set custom text. And because of that, I'm just used to doing it like that. I'm just used to adding the buttons manually and assigning a role to them, because by doing that, you can also add a cancel button and all that. And you will get different integer code. So this is going to be 0. And this is going to be 1, because this is the first button, second button. And we can just say now, if the dialog executed with underscore, if the result of that equals 0, this means that we chose yes, so we really want to send this. And we're going to go into a try and accept again. We just close this down here. And in the try, what we're going to do is we're going to say self.message from is going to be, actually we can pass a name here, so we don't have to pass the email, but we didn't provide a box for name. Maybe you want to do that as well. You want to set a name that we're going to send in the email header. I'm just going to go with neural 9 here statically, so I'm not gonna get anything from the text boxes. If you want to do that, you just type self.lineEdit, I don't know, lineEdit x, whatever the number is, dot text, and that's basically it. Then we're going to say self.message2 is going to be self.lineEdit, and which one was the 2? It was this one, 5. So lineEdit underscore 5 dot text is going to be the 2. Again, if you want to do it professionally, you don't call them lineEdit 5 or whatever, you call them 2 to text box or to line edit, whatever. And then we want to have the subject as well. The subject should be 6 then. And that's basically subject, that's the header. And then we can say self.message.attach. And we're going to attach the MIME text. So this is not an actual attachment here. This is just the text of the mail. This is just the body text of the mail. And what we're going to pass here is self.textedit.to plain text. Here we cannot just use the text function. To plain text. And the type of text that we're attaching to the mail is plain text. And then what we're going to do is we're going to say text equals the whole message, the whole email. So self.message as a string, because what we want to send in the end is a string. So this is the text. And then we're just going to say self.server.sendMail, self.lineEdit.text. This is the from. Self.lineEdit_to.text. Not 2, sorry, it was 5. This is the to. So first parameter, email from. Second parameter, email to. And the third parameter is actually the text that we're sending, actually the mail string, the thing that we're sending. So again, we construct this email as a multi-part thing. We then in the end turn it into a string that can easily be sent. This is sent mail, not sent main. And then we use the send mail function to pass these as parameters. And all we do after that is basically using a message box. We're going to copy this here to inform us that all of this was successful. No, sorry. There you go. We're going to say mail sent. Because if we don't get to that part, or if something fails here, we're not going to get to that part. We're going to go to the accept branch. And for that, we're going to say just a generic sending mail failed, like that. And of course, if you want, you can look into the documentation of the different libraries, and you can just look for the exception types, and you can say, okay, if the mail failed for that reason, print that error message and all that. I'm just going to print for now a generic error message. Again, this is not a professional project. Otherwise, you would want to have branches for the different exception types with respective error messages. So that is how you send the email. So we should be able to already send an email without attachment. So let's see if that works. We're going to log into neural testing 2021@gmail.com. We're going to pass a password. We're going to say smtp@gmail.com 587. We're going to log in, and we're going to choose this temp mail here as the receiver, or as a recipient, and test is going to be the subject. Then I'm going to add some text here just to see if it works. Send mail. Do you really want to send this mail? Yes. Mail sent. There you go. It's here. So the basic process of sending a mail works. Of course, we don't have attachments yet. So the last part is to now implement the attach something method. And for this, we're going to start with a file dialog so that we can choose the files that we want to attach. And for this, we're going to say options equals queue file dialog dot options. Nothing special about this. And then file names and a return value that we're not interested in is going to be queue file dialog dot get open file names. It's important that you specify names, not name, because name is going to allow you to only choose one file. Names is going to allow you to choose multiple files. Then we're going to say self. We're going to call this open file. We're going to pass no caption here. And the types of files that we want to accept are all files. So all files, and star for basically everything everything. We're not limited to one file type. Of course, if you want to, you can limit yourself to one file type. So you can type star.py, for example, if you only want to send Python scripts. And then we're going to pass options equals options. All right, so those are the file names. Now we're going to say, okay, if the file names are not an empty list. So if we actually get something as a result, we're going to say for each file name in file names, we're going to say attachment equals open this file name in reading bytes mode. Even if it's not about bytes, we're going to still open it in bytes. And no, we don't have a with statement, so we're going to do it like that. And then we're going to say file name equals file name, and we're going to, because what we're going to end up with is a whole path like this one here, and we're going to have the file name in the end. So what we want to do is we want to find the last slash, and we're going to remove everything before that. So what we're going to do is we're going to say file name, and we want to go to the position file name rfind, so find from right to left. We're going to find the first slash from right to left, so the last slash from left to right, and we're going to pick that position +1, and from there on up until the end, we're going to slice this file name to just get the file name in the end. This is important because we already opened the proper file path, and for the label, we want to have the file name only. This is why we're doing that. And then we're going to say P for payload basically is MIME base. And MIME base, we need to pass some strings here, application and octet stream. I knew why we need to pass them, to be honest. I don't really know what octet stream means, but I think this is generally what you pass. So don't ask me for details. I think it is Googleable in 1 minute. So it's not really anything complex. And then we're going to set the payload to be attachment.read. So the file that we specified, we're going to read the bytes. We're going to pass that as a payload. Then we're going to encode this. So encoders.encode base64. We're going to encode this. Then we add the header. This is the next line that you should not ask about details because I think it's specified in documentation, but I don't know precisely what we're setting here. Content disposition, and what we're passing here is attachment semicolon, then file name equals, and here we pass the file name. So this is basically what the recipient is going to see. We don't want to have the whole file path. We just want to see, okay, there is a file called main.py, for example. And then all we need to do is self.message.attach, and what we're attaching is P. P is already encoded, P is the payload, and this is what we send. And then all we need to do here is to format this additional attachment or those additional attachments into the label. So what we're going to do is we're going to say if not self.label8, I think it was, right? Label 8 was the attachment label. There you go. If not self.label8.text ends with colon, then we're going to add a comma. So then we're going to say self.label8.set text is going to be what it is already. So self.label8.text plus a comma, but only if it doesn't end with colon. Why? Because by default it ends with colon. So the first time we don't want to add a comma, but every time after that we want to add a comma. And what we're going to add every time definitely is going to be the name of the file. So set text is going to be the text that we already have plus a space plus the file name. And every time except for the first time, we're also going to add a comma before all of that. So this seems to work quite well, or this seems to be it. So let's run this and see if it works or if we made any mistakes. Once again, we're going to log in, neural testing 2021 gmail.com, then the password that I chose, then smtp.gmail.com. And then the port is 587. By the way, I think the default unencrypted SMTP is 25, so you can also try that if some ports don't work. Login, and then we're going to again copy this, paste it, and the subject is going to be hello with attachment. And we're going to say hello world. What is up? I attached some files. And we're going to now add attachments. We're going to, first of all, choose these two files. There you go. Okay, this didn't work. We need to review that because it added a comma in the beginning. I think we need to check for colon and space, but we're gonna look at that in a second. And now if I also add something from the desktop, for example, this socialmedia.py, then I have this attachment as well. And now if I send this mail, yes, it says mail sent. And if I go to this email, you can see that I have the attachments here, so I can open them, I can download them from the email, and this works. Now, the only thing that didn't work was this attachment thing, so or the label. I think this should be fixable by just saying colon and space, depending on what your label ends with. And let's see if that works. So again, we log into neural testing. This is a little bit tedious. 2021 at gmail.com. 587 login. Invalid login info. Neural testing. Oh, Gmail. At least the error message works. There you go. Add attachment. Add these two. And now it works. Now you can see it works. I think, though, we have an additional space here that we don't need. Now, this is easily fixable by just turning this back to colon without space and then going into the Qt Designer and changing the value here to not have a space, then saving that, then just replacing the UI file. And I'm not going to go through the whole process of logging in again, but this is just a minor detail. It should work now. And this is how you build a graphical user interface mailing client in Python. So that's it for today's video. Hope you enjoyed and hope you learned something. If so, let me know by hitting the like button, leaving a comment in the comment section down below. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell to not miss a single future video for free. Other than that, thank you very much for watching. See you in the next video, and bye.